Forming and operating an LLC isn't rocket science, but there are a few things you should know to decide if it's the right move for you. This is one of the most common questions I get, and I want to take you through my 4 top reasons to form an LLC. And these aren't the top reasons that I Googled or that I asked ChatGPT. This all comes from having worked with hundreds of clients and interacting with thousands of you small business owners. They aren't in a particular order, but I am saving my favorite for last. Hey, my name is Mark too, and I'm a CPA and former online reseller who specializes in helping resellers and online businesses with taxes and with growing their businesses profitably. First of all, it probably isn't super urgent to run out and form an LLC today. Too often I've seen resellers and small business owners bite off way more than they need to too soon, which leaves them more paperwork and more fees that they shouldn't have had to deal with. You're a sole proprietor by default. This is what the IRS considers you to be the moment you start selling with the intent to make a profit. LLC is a limited liability company, not a limited liability corporation, which is a common mistake that people make when talking about LLCs. Forming an LLC does not automatically result in tax savings. If you're a single member LLC, the IRS is going to treat you the same exact way they did when you were a sole proprietorship. LLCs are formed at the state level and don't have any specific IRS forms. So if you're a single member LLC, the IRS has you file that activity on a Schedule C of your individual tax return, which is the same for sole proprietorships. If you have a multi-member LLC, the IRS has you file the same way as you would have if you had a partnership, which requires a separate business tax return, Form 1065. An LLC doesn't have to be the next move after a sole proprietorship, but it's the most common and usually the best next move as you grow. So let's dive into my top reasons for forming an LLC. Reason number 1 to form an LLC is for liability protection. Liability protection with an LLC means that if your business faces debts or lawsuits, your personal assets like your home or savings accounts are usually safe. In other words, your personal belongings are protected from being taken to cover business debts or legal issues. Some of you might be saying, well, I don't have a lot of personal assets. Then the liability protection probably isn't as important for you as it might be for someone who has a lot of assets like homes, investments, properties, and so on. The other part of this is the risk. The more risk that is inherent in your business or industry, the more appealing an LLC will be. If you're selling dangerous equipment, you definitely want to have that liability protection that the LLC is designed to give you. But if you're selling clothing online like a lot of my clients, there's just not that much risk. So even if you have a lot of personal assets, the fact that your business isn't very risky doesn't make the LLC as urgent. And remember, the LLC won't protect you if you aren't acting like a business. You've got to keep your personal activities separate from your business dealings. If you mix things up too much, a court could decide that your LLC isn't really a separate entity, and you could end up on the hook personally for any messes your business gets into. Reason number 2 I like the LLC is that it can facilitate relationships with banks and vendors. When dealing with banks or suppliers or manufacturers, having an LLC adds credibility and structure to your business. Banks may be more willing to extend credit or provide loans to an LLC with a clear business structure, as opposed to a sole proprietorship or more informal business entity. Similarly, vendors and suppliers often prefer to work with established entities for long-term partnerships, and having an LLC signals professionalism and commitment. And you might say, well, I really don't have any formal business relationships like that, and that's fine. So let's go to my third reason, and honestly one of the most common reasons I've seen for my clients wanting to form an LLC. Reason number 3 is to elevate your overall perception of legitimacy. Operating as an LLC can enhance your brand's credibility and trustworthiness in the eyes of customers or partners and the public in general. Presenting yourself as a legitimate business entity can significantly impact consumer confidence and sales. Now, a sole proprietorship is also a legitimate business entity, but the perception is still much different. When people see that LLC after your business name, it's like an instant credibility boost. Customers, partners, and even banks, they all tend to trust businesses more when they're set up as an LLC. It's like putting on a snazzy suit for your business. It shows that you mean business and that you're serious about what you're doing. Okay, so now for my favorite. Reason number 4 is that an LLC can be a stepping stone to an S-Corp. Remember, an LLC doesn't save you on taxes, but an S-Corp can help you realize significant tax savings under the right circumstances. But you can't skip straight from a sole proprietorship to an S-Corp. You first need to establish a more formal entity, and typically that's going to be an LLC. Once you have the LLC in place, you can do what's called elect S-Corp status. Now, this doesn't mean you're no longer an LLC. You're still an LLC, but you're taxed differently by the IRS. Technically, it means that you're taxed according to subchapter S of the Internal Revenue Code. So remember, an S-Corp doesn't exist on its own. It has to be layered onto something else like an LLC. And this video isn't about S-Corps, but the savings comes from from the fact that your S-Corp profits are not subject to self-employment tax, which is about 15% in which you are subject to as a sole proprietor or LLC that has an elected S-Corp status. So those savings can be huge. Typically, you should at least be looking into the S-Corporation when you're hitting at least $30,000 to $50,000 of profit per year. So if the S-Corp makes sense for you, you want to make sure you have the LLC in place first. So those are my top reasons in a nutshell. An LLC usually is not a bad idea, especially if you're in a state that charges minimal annual renewal fees. But if you're in a state like California with a minimum annual fee of $800, you just want to be sure you actually need it. I do dozens of LLCs and S-Corp formations every year, so if you need help or are wondering what would be best for you, feel free to reach out to me. Or feel free to come ask in my free Facebook group, Accounting for Online Sellers. Use the links below for more resources to help you optimize your tax situation and overcome the anxiety so you can focus on building your business profitably.